Living the life.
Our first guest is Sister Maria Zafar, who's joining us from Islamic Relief UK. She's based in Luton, who is here to discuss the flooding in Asia and Africa and the responsibility of the Muslims to take climate action. Welcome, Maria, to Islam Channel.
Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam.
Welcome. Well, look, it's a very apt topic to discuss because it started raining today for the first time in goodness knows how long.
Absolutely.
And obviously a torrential rainfall around the world, not for us. It's a case of just getting an umbrella out, but around the world, Sudan, you've got Pakistan, Karachi, for example, and other parts of the world. It's a massive issue at the moment, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Over the past few months, the flooding has been a serious issue across Asia and Africa. And we're talking about in Sudan, the government put in a state of an emergency. In Niger, there was 40,000 homes destroyed. And you're looking in Bangladesh, which is something like 1.27 homes destroyed and 167,000 people and families displaced. So when we're talking about flooding, it's having a mass devastating impact. And also the case for Afghanistan and Pakistan is around like mass casualties and homes being destroyed.
That's right, that's right. And Maria, the damage also doesn't go away overnight, does it? It's long lasting and it lingers. Tell us a little bit about what Islamic Relief are doing to help.
So in the short term, Islamic Relief are really working to provide the sort of life-saving aid that's needed. So we're talking about food, water, sanitation, health, shelter, to sort of really tackle with the aftermath of a sort of a climate tragedy. But in the long term, they're also helping communities deal with the loss of livelihood and sort of create a sustainable living. So in Bangladesh, for example, a lot of people lose their crops, their means of income. So Islamic Relief are working on the ground to support them also and sort of get them back on their feet.
I mean, sadly, most of the people affected around the world because of flooding are those that are already quite vulnerable, unfortunately. They're already, it's a double whammy for them. They're already struggling as it is. And that rainfall, because their houses are not made on a similar construction to, anything what the richer have in their community. Their work is dependent upon some of the more menial jobs. How difficult is that trying to deal with a double situation when people are already struggling in poverty and then the rains come and makes life a little bit difficult for them, if not very difficult for them?
I think the reality is that we need to realize that every action we're taking, it has a carbon emission to it. And whatever we're doing here in the UK, climate change doesn't discriminate. It will affect everybody. But it's just unfortunate that if here in the West, we are having the biggest carbon footprint. We've got the largest carbon footprint, but unfortunately it's hitting those vulnerable, poorer communities that, as you said, they don't have the sort of shelter and they don't have the sort of sturdy infrastructure that we have here in the West, but unfortunately they're dealing with the brunt of the climate crisis. I mean, I think something that we all should really wake up to.
On that note, I mean, look, not everybody's as well versed, I'm certainly not, on the carbon footprint. What difference does it make what we're doing here around the world?
Yeah, essentially, when we're talking about carbon emissions, we're talking about changing weather systems. We're talking about mass global warming and the warming of the Earth's temperature. So just to put things into context, for example, we all know that, in Asia, there's monsoon season, and we're all quite familiar to that. But what we don't know is that year on year, it's getting more and more extreme. Let's take this year, for example. In Karachi, on the 27th of August, it saw the largest amount of flooding in one day in its recorded history. And we're looking at Bangladesh, where in July, a third of the country was underwater. So it's things like that we're seeing more and more change of weather patterns, more and more impact. And it's hard to see. I totally understand where people perhaps that are not as worse don't see it. But just because we don't see it doesn't mean that the climate, our actions are having an effect on the climate.
Yeah. Maria, so naturally there's short-term solutions, there's medium-term solutions, but the long-term, and we're talking, that is the real solution that we're looking for, is the British Muslim community, for example, to, kind of learn a little bit more about the impact they're having on our environment and this climate change that you're referring to. So what can our viewers do to kind of help?
So I think whilst it's great that, you know, people are donating, which is fantastic in terms of the immediate relief, people do really need to use their voices, and not just, you know, let's say for your family, say in Pakistan or Bangladesh, but also as what our faith dictates. So what we'd really like the British Muslim community to do is to become the actual Khalifs of the earth, as our religion dictates, and sign on to the Climate Coalition's declaration. Now, the Climate Coalition's declaration is an open letter to the Prime Minister saying, as we recover from coronavirus, we need to take action and bear in mind the climate responsibility we have. So we're talking green jobs. We're talking about taking accountability of the climate when making policy change and economic decisions.
I mean, look,
and people can do that by going onto the Climate Coalition's website.
You've touched on something that's quite important and something that's neglected, is Islam's position on the climate, on, you know, being Khalifas and stewards of the earth, animal rights, for example. There's, you know, certain elements that we are missing out as Muslims. We're not active in them. Yes, alhamdulillah, we're very generous when it comes to the floods and other issues, but the climate per se, animal welfare, there's 2 or 3 of these things that are very well versed in the Quran, and you know, I mean, just the word alone that Allah has placed as stewards on the earth has a massive meaning, but we don't really understand it, do we?
Yeah, and it's such an unfortunate thing. Whereas, you know, we see people that are very scholared, very educated, but when it comes to thinking about the more sort of spiritual, ecological coexistence within the earth, and it's very sad that we don't see as much enthusiasm. Where I know there's some amazing Muslims out there doing and fighting for climate change, and, you know, really pushing the thing to act up and do more. But we're talking about, you know, there's a part of, I don't really know as much, but there's a part of the Quran which talks about mizan and balance and restoring the balance.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
And I think we need to just remind ourselves, is like, you know, just as the hadith has taught us, and just as the Quran says, is that, you know, it is a gift. The earth is a gift, and I think we need to remind ourselves of that and be grateful.
Actually,
and
on that note, Imran, I'm going to challenge you. When's the last time you listened to a lecture or your Jummah khutbah that the Imam or the scholar or somebody spoke about the climate?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think I've ever.
It doesn't happen, does it?
No, it doesn't.
And this is one of the key issues, is it not? Surely, you know, our scholars, our teachers, the masajid, and, you know, community organizations, they really need to make a massive effort. And, you know, even if my personal advice, for example, if you want to make, I mean, obviously, unfortunately, the masajids are closed, and we love our masajids, we love our imams, but you know what? Every so often, we need to push ourselves as a community that maybe, you know, you guys want to come up with something. You're doing fantastic work in the maybe one Jummah in the year. We need to have every masjid in the country just talking about climate change for the khutbah.
That's a good shout.
Yeah, and that's exactly what we're trying to work on now, is just to get that voice out there. And also to realize that, yes, there are people that are going through coronavirus, but let's not forget the communities that there's got this dual problem to deal with. Not only have they got coronavirus, but they're having to deal with the climate crisis head on along the same time. So yeah, it's definitely something to think about, and something that we at Islamic Relief are very, very conscious about.
Alhamdulillah. So again, you know, just to reiterate something that Brother Naeem said as well, and I think those of us that have got links or contacts with masjids or with committee members or have got a good platform, whether it be social media or within the community, I think it's important that us Muslims do our bit and speak a little bit more about this.
Tonight?
I drove in my car.
You see, you should have cycled it.
However, I cycled to work, so you know, I'm getting the balance. I'm getting there.
I mean, look, on that note, the Climate Coalition. Tell us who's involved in that. What are the key points?
So the Climate Coalition are essentially a body of over 100 organizations. And what we're doing is we're all united in the same mission and the same thing, to get the climate on the agenda and to get our governments up to scratch and really talking about, you know, it's great. Behavior change is great. You and I doing things, but we do need to get government and funding sort of to take the backing of us. So, for example, if you look at the 5p carrier bag tax or things like that, we really need the government to take responsibility and to recognize that people do care for our families, for our faith, and for our future, really.
Yeah, absolutely. I think our future generations can learn a lot. You mentioned the 5p carrier bags. I mean, 10 years down the line, even now it feels totally normal.
Does it hurt you when you pay that 5 pence?
I tell you what hurts is when they're 15 pence. So we've got no 5p bags. We've only got the 15p ones.
Look,
but anyway.
I mean, just on that note, you know, I went on a field trip, and I won't tell you where it was. And one of the brothers said, "Come with me, I want to show you something." And we stood there, and it's one of these sewage pipes, and it was the water that was coming out of this sewage pipe was absolutely black. I said, what's going on here? He said, some of the leading industrialists here, that's from their factories. And that water goes into the stream. And the stream is where the animals drink from, the local community takes the water from. So the people who are in the power, you talked about governments, some of them sadly are benefiting from the wrong side of the climate issue.
Absolutely, yeah.
This is a massive challenge. So how do you ensure that you put the pressure on the governments and the powers that be and those who have control of some of the bigger issues, so to speak, that can take control of what's happening in the climate? How do you do that?
This is what I was thinking. Like educate the next generation to have voices stronger than ours, for example.
See, I think this is the thing. I think people often forget that everyone's a constituent, and how much interaction do we actually have with our local MPs? And this is why people, when they have an opinion, when you're frustrated about something, or even if something sort of interests you, you do need to reach out to your MPs and say, look, this is something I deeply care about. I'm worried about the future generations, my children's future. It's a part of my faith. Is there something that you're doing? And it's when those voices unite that you get sort of system change and government policy coming into place. And that's what we're really trying to do through the Climate Coalition.
Right, listen, moving on from your point about the carrier bags, let's get really practical. Mario, what are the maybe top 5 or 10 things that we, as the viewers, people are watching, Joe Public, or it should be called Abdul Public, shouldn't it? Not Joe Public, right? Should be doing to try and make those changes. So the carrier bag is one. We should always take our, what's it called?
Just a
lifetime bag with us. Yeah, that's one. What are the other things that we should be? You're trying to recommend to people to take care of the climate?
So there's this great blog that came out by Islamic Relief just a few weeks ago, which highlights all the different things you can do. So, but just to give you a bit of a snapshot, is number one, I would say, is to use your voice. If you are passionate, because I know there's a lot of really passionate Muslims out there that are thinking about the environment and ecology, is to tell your friends, strike up a conversation, talk to your close loved ones about climate change, because that's how a discussion starts. I would definitely say sign on to the declaration because it's a commitment. You're saying, yes, I want the government to do more about the climate. But in terms of day-to-day life, we only have to look at what coronavirus has done in terms of animals coming out, there's cleaner air. We really do need to acknowledge our surroundings. And by that, if you see litter on the floor, pick it up. And other things people can do is reduce their plastic consumption and try and adopt a minimalist type of living where you're not, for example, using too much plastic or using sort of one-use only plastic bottles, and you're using reusable cups, not reusable cups, but have water bottles and things like that. So it's just small little changes. They're not massive things. Perhaps instead of going, having a week where you're eating meat every day, you're having meat, 4 times a week. So it's the thing about really reducing your behavior.
Having meat 4 times a week? My goodness.
Well,
Imran, she's talking about you.
That sounds pretty good. That sounds pretty good, 4 times a week.
That's just a suggestion. I'm saying if you're really passionate and committed, by all means, go without meat. I've reduced my meat intake quite severely to once a week. And it's possible when you're thinking about the damage that it's doing to the environment. Sometimes, there's things bigger than yourselves, right? This is really helping the environment. And if there's these small things you can do, I would certainly recommend it.
Have you got recycling bins at home?
Yeah, I'm big on recycling. My family sometimes say
my
I'm a
wife
bit
gives
obsessed.
a really hard time.
Really?
If I put something in the wrong bin, or if you don't clean it out properly and you put the little glass in, she's like.
See, I'm the opposite. I'm always like, why is that not in recycling and things like that? But Khair, Maria, I think by the sounds of it, we shouldn't be a burden on our environment the same way we don't want to be a burden on other human beings. Just because the earth cannot speak back to us, we shouldn't be a burden upon it.
Well, the earth is speaking back to us. The rainfalls, the floods, it is speaking back to us. But we're just not taking heed, bro.
That's right.
You know what I mean?
Right. We're trying to get there. There's some fantastic tips there, Maria. So just let us know as well. Islamic Relief are out there. How can people get in contact? What's the website address, and what is the current campaign with trying to deal with these floods in Asia and Africa?
So we have our financial campaign, which of course people can donate towards, but more on the advocacy side of stuff. If people can contact me directly, my name is Maria Zafar. You can find me on Twitter or by putting in my email address, which I will happily make available to you guys later, which you can pass on. But if you contact Islamic Relief, I'm sure they'll be, not Islamic Relief, sorry, Islam Channel, they can sort of pipe it down to me, and I'll be happy to answer any questions or queries. But essentially, I think if I leave on the final note, which is people just need to be more mindful about the climate in everything that they do, and just take heed to your responsibilities and your faith, really.
And I think the beautiful point that you made earlier, we are placed on the earth as stewards. That's the most important thing, because that has massive meaning.
It does.
Massive meaning.
Absolutely.
And if we can just understand that verse from the Quran, alhamdulillah, I think we'll be 99.9% of the way there.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Jazakallah khair, Maria. Our salams to our brother and sister, Islamic Relief, inshallah.
Okay.
Salam
Take care.
wa
Walaikum assalam.
Living the life.